was really great. And we'd like to move on to the next speaker, which is, we're also very happy to have Juliane Christensen with us. Juliane is a trained dancer and a neuroscientist, and she is connected to the Max-Planck-Institut in Frankfurt. And she wrote a book also, which received international recognition about how dance can help us to be happier. And I'd love to invite Julia to speak about if it's really just that simple. Should we just all start dancing?
I'll say yes. Can you hear me all right?
Yeah, we hear you. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for having me. And well, I'm Julia F. Christensen. I'm a psychologist, a neuroscientist, and I work at the Max-Planck-Institut for Empirical Aesthetics in Frankfurt. Today, I work as a scientist on dance, culture, and the brain, but I have not always been a scientist. I trained as a professional dancer, but an injury made that career completely impossible. And when I moved out of the dance world and into university to study, I got very aware of what it means not having dance and the arts in your life anymore. I was struggling with restlessness, my mind was really cluttered, and I definitely did not have well-being. And this set me on a quest to find out what is the science about the arts and well-being that can make us find out what we need to do to feel better with ourselves and our life. So as I speak to you today, I speak with my two hats, as a dancer and as a scientist. And I have prepared some slides for you. But before we dive into the science, I actually want to give you a real quick crash course in brain function. So I've brought here a little life-size brain. No worries, it's not a real one, but I want to show you something. So front here, back there, lots of exciting systems like the prefrontal cortex, important for taking decisions, an Alice band that stretches from ear to ear over your head, our movement systems, the temporal poles, all important systems for our memory. And if we go into the Sylvian fissure here with a little spatula, open it up, we see a little piece of cortex in there. Can you see it? This is the insula. And if I take a little bit of brain apart here, luckily it's plastic, so that can happen. You can see the insula, important structure for your hormones, for your immune system, and for your interoception. That's the feeling of your body from within. Now, very importantly, our brain does not just float around up here being marvelous. It is marvelous, but importantly, and this is maybe very obvious, it is connected to the wider body. And this is an important piece of information. Through our spinal cord, out into the wider body, via long nerve cells, flow these ganglia that connect our brain to our organs, to our muscles, and they make information flow from our brain into our body and the other way as well. And now, the thing is, if you and we were now in a dance class, I could tell you, move your arm like that, or turn your head, or step like this, and you'll dance better. But for your brain, I cannot tell you, please now activate your insula so that your homeostatic system might be better and you might get better well-being. So what can we do, we humans? We can, through the behavior that we choose to do and the cues that we allow to enter our senses, have a say, have agency in how we feel. So by choosing what you do, you can choose how you feel. And today I want to speak a bit more about how this doing works when it's dancing. So now the fearful moment of trying to share my slides. Please, guys, help me. What I'm going to do now is sharing my slides. And you must tell me whether what you see is the presenter mode or just my slides. So here you should now be seeing my slides. Do you see the presenter mode or just my slides? Please, someone answer me real quick.
Oh, we see your presenter mode, Julia.
All right, I have prepared for that. No worries. I do need to see my slides, unfortunately. So what do you see if I share my slides like this?
That's much better. Thank you.
Brilliant. So, hang on a sec. So my topic that I research is dance, culture, and the brain. And whenever I tell someone about that, the first question that people come with, or the first exclamation is, well, I can't dance. And I want to say, well, you can, but I might have to convince you of this. So here we go. If we look at this slide, this is probably what would happen if I would ask every one of you who's attending this talk, what is dance for you? So when you say, I can't dance, what do you mean? What is dance for you? As scientists, we dissect phenomena. When we see a behavior like dance, we ask, what is its constituent components? So let's dissect dance a little. In its very basic form, dance is actually the ability to follow a beat. In the environment, a rhythm calls out and we join in. Actually, research shows that newborns, few hours after birth, are already able to synchronize their brain waves without thinking about it to an external beat. And not only that, so when we were playing that, we would play them random beats or speech. This synchronization of brain waves does not happen. What is more, comparative neuroscientists have actually shown that comparing the neural pathways between brain and body in our closest living relatives, the chimpanzees, for example, there's a special connection in us humans between the parts of the brain that process rhythm. So through our hearing, we hear a beat, and with the large muscles of our body. Now, that's interesting because even though this is very early evidence, what this means is that our muscles, through our hearing, can actually not resist a beat. So we have a basic predisposition to follow a beat. What is more, very exciting evidence by professors Eric Jarvis and others show that, of course, when we dance, there's another thing that we do, and that is gesturing with our arms, our hands, and our face. And interestingly, the neural pathways that control part of our vocal apparatus, the larynx, are also responsible for the motor control of our upper limbs. So for our brain, when we gesture, that we do when we are dancing or otherwise, actually are a type of language. So then the whole idea of body language becomes a completely new meaning. So as I was saying, I promise that I'm a dancer, but also a scientist, and we dissect the phenomena. So so my first answer to someone saying I can't dance is actually, yes, you can, because you're born with the predisposition to follow a beat and to gesture and to express yourself with your gestures in a dance. Now, interestingly, if we stick for a moment with the idea of gesture, what we see in intervention studies with dance movement therapists, it is the expressive component, the expressing how you feel as you dance, which is linked to the very important well-being effects that we're all chasing. So dance it out more than ever actually is something that might bring you closer to these well-being effects. And another aspect of this, have you noticed that when you dance very often, you move your arms up over your head? So in some of our studies in the lab, what we do is we teach people very simple dance movements with the arms. You can even just do them sitting. And what we found in one of those studies is that after just 8 minutes, we found a mood induction effect. People felt happier. And the stronger this mood induction effect was, the more motivation did people feel afterwards as well for their work. And in another study, we had people imitate very simple dance movements again, and afterwards, after 5 minutes only, found interesting creativity increases in their creative outputs. And did you know, if you move your arms over your head, do it maybe now for a moment and make some nice movements, you distress the solar plexus. That is a nerve bundle that sits under the breastbone. And after days of sitting, maybe like many of us do, we actually compress this nerve bundle, and that can make us feel through this brain-body connection via our spinal cord, remember, very suppressed and oppressed. So quite literally, you can relieve yourself by dancing with your arms over your head. So there really are plenty of good reasons for dancing and making sure that your dance break, even if it's very short, has arms over the head movements. But back to the objection that you say, I can't dance. That's the social and enculturation effects that are talking through you there. It is very much dancing to what your brain's expectations are about dancing. Did you grow up, like more on the left of the slide, learning that dancing is something you watch in detached admiration, sitting very still? Or did you grow up in an environment where joining in, like on the right, was the norm? This is very important because also this is dancing for our brain. And then there is a very, very funny assumption. I find it funny because while it's okay that we need to learn to drive a car or cook pasta or play football, when it's about dancing, we somehow have to know it without practicing. Well, you know now that we all have the basic neural machinery to follow a beat and gesture. And you know, you can use that right away. You can go out dancing and have wonderful well-being effects with that. But if you want to learn a choreographed dance style, for example, to expand your experience, learn the vocabulary of a choreographed dance style like Balfoco ballet or Argentine tango, well, you'll have to practice. And that's like this for every skill that you might want to learn. And so how do you do that? Well, you try to find a dance course either online or in person, Google a dance class in your city, and you will find a great offer, I'm sure, or find an app or take a little class on YouTube and see if that works for you. But what does our brain do then? Well, it uses the very exciting process that neuroscientists call neuroplasticity. And that is something that we have at any age, we can learn. And if we're talking about dancing, here on the picture, you can see this Alice band that I spoke about earlier that stretches from ear to ear. That is our motor cortices, our somatosensory systems, very important for learning new movement repertoires. And intervention studies show that you need between 4 months and practicing actually quite a lot, 90 minutes twice a week to get to these changes, statistically significant changes in your brain. So have patience, learn your skill. And what processes do you actually kick off with that when you do that? Well, you might remember when you started driving your car that at the beginning it was really effortful and you would have to think of every movement and you couldn't imagine that ever you would be able to do this all at once. But then with time and repetition, what our brain does is that it remembers when we do meaningful movements over and again, and it starts forming habit loops and coding them into what we call motor plans. And that's because it would simply be too much of an energy drive if we were to remember each movement all the time. So these movement skills that we practice to expand our dance experience, they slowly pass from explicit, effortful memory systems into implicit memory systems. And that's when we start to be able to use these movements as a means of expression, as a body language. And again, it's all about this connection between brain and body that makes that possible. Now, so we've spoken about the scientist view of dissecting phenomena, and I hope to have convinced you that we have the basic machinery, all of us. But now we've also spoken about some other elements that makes dance dance for our brain. And those are the maturation processes as we grow up, the social context that surrounds us, and the cultural factors that might make you think that dancing has to be something very perfect. The good thing is, no matter who you are, you have neuroplasticity and you can change those processes. Now, you will now say, okay, that's all very well, but still, I prefer to stand at the bar. When I dance, it looks really clumsy and I don't think I can do it. So then maybe this knowledge nugget that I now have for you might be interesting, because the newest evidence actually shows that maybe we should leave the professional dancing to the professionals, because when we are after well-being effects, that's when we should just be dancing for fun. And what do I mean by that? Let's have a look for a moment at these well-being effects that we have, or health effects in general that we see from dancing. So science shows, just an overview, that regular dancing helps us maintain cognitive flexibility at old age. It improves mood and well-being. It improves our balance and coordination. It reduces risk for heart disease. It burns calories, always good. It increases bone density. It decreases bone density. That's a contradiction. Well, carrying on for now, dance expertise modulates brain structure, the action observation network in the brain, aesthetic responsiveness, and it improves our emotion recognition abilities. It increases our interoceptive accuracy, remember the insula. It reduces cortisol in blood, and it increases cortisol in blood. Another contradiction. Now, how could that be? Well, first, large-scale studies show that the problem is if we engage with a behavior that is competitive, this makes the stress symphony ring out in our body. It means we have stress hormones in our body, and that is not healthy in the long run. It deregulates our hormonal and immune systems. So to dance for well-being, what seems to be important is that we stay clear of what I call mind hooks. These are things like competitive behaviors that hook us away from the flow that we might feel and the feeling of well-being that we might develop because we activate restorative processes in our body. I speak about these mind hooks in chapter 2 of my new book, The Pathway to Flow, and I recommend that for a well-being for ourselves, we become aware of what we do to our body when we expose ourselves to certain environments, let cues and behaviors be imposed onto us, which take us away from the restorative effects that dancing can have for us. I want to present to you now the golden trio of well-being that you can have by engaging with the arts and specifically dance. When you dance, you exercise. That's number one. According to the WHO, we need 180 minutes of aerobic exercise per week to stay healthy. This is non-negotiable. Please start today if you haven't already. And the good thing is, you can use dance for your aerobic exercise. Dancing brings our heartbeat up over the desired 140 beats per minute. That makes it aerobic. It burns between 4 and 11 calories per minute, depending on the dance style. That's like slow running. So use dance as your exercise. Number two, usually there is music in dancing. And music has its own neurohormonal effects on our body and brain. And it has this extra helpful element that it helps us to express. With the music we love, we express even better when we dance. And the third component of the trio is the social connection effects. Within a dance community, you can get very important, needed social bonding effects. Why is that important? Well, we have a very social brain, and the insula I was talking about before, it deregulates our immune system, our hormonal systems when we are lonely. So we need to seek behaviors, as I said, put your behaviors to good use to activate in your brain the right processes. And we do that in a safe space, in a non-judgmental safe space of a dance class or a social dance evening, for example. So that's the golden trio of dance engagement that can be conducive to health effects. Another thing that I really want to tell you about, and that already was talked a little bit about in the previous talk, about these synchronous movements that we can do together, which interestingly have very good social glue effects. Now, what is it about moving in synchrony, for example, in a dance, that makes it so social gluey? Well, when we move, say I move, my brain knows it's me moving. When I see you moving, my brain knows it's you moving. However, when we move in synchrony, suddenly I imitate you or you imitate me, and we kind of get into this situation of mirroring each other. The activation patterns of my movements and your movements start overlapping. That's a process called co-representation in the brain. And when that happens, it confuses the brain a little bit. seemingly, because experiments show that when people have moved together in synchrony, afterwards they like each other more, they feel more empathic towards each other, and they're even better in solving problems together. Good reasons to dance together, you might say. And it's all thanks to this bonding effect of overlapping activation patterns when we move in synchrony. And interestingly, also, studies have shown that the peripersonal space, that's the security distance, this non-intimacy part of ourselves, actually shrinks. So we let people come closer after a synchrony experience. You can even do that sitting and swaying from side to side at a table if you prefer to sit. Remember, it's all about the connection between brain and body, and the movements, behaviors, actions that you choose to do, you can change how you feel. Now, the take-home messages that I have for you is that you have agency. You can change how you feel by what you do, for example, by dancing. Remember the beat. Your brain wants to dance. You're born with the predisposition to follow a beat, to gesture, and to follow others in the dance. And that has important social effects. Remember to express. More than focusing on the image that you are projecting, focus back on yourself and express that. Beware of mind hooks. I mentioned one, competitiveness. Let's the stress symphony ring out big time in your body. This is not linked to health effects. Have fun. It really is important that what you do appeals to you. Never mind what others think is important in a dance style. Find the dance style that works for you. And remember the golden trio of well-being: exercise, social effects, and music. And maybe try to make that skill, dancing, your flow tool. Make dance your mind medicine. And I'm saying that because, you know, here you see two pictures of me while I was still doing the dance education. Then the accident had happened and I couldn't continue that career. I had loads of problems with just sitting up straight, but I found that I could start drawing. I could draw the movements from the 3D world that I couldn't anymore inhabit. I could draw it 2D on paper, and I could still do the movements I loved with the trace. You saw several pictures throughout this talk, and that's what I did to find flow when I couldn't move anymore for a while. Now, I speak more about this in my 2 books, and I'd love to hear what you think. If you'd like to connect, reach out on LinkedIn, for example, and let me know how you created your pathway to flow. The evidence shows that it's so much more about not waiting for the storm to pass, not waiting until you're able to do that perfect move, but it's much more just about to learn to dance in the rain. That was my experience, and sometimes to draw it. I'd like to thank the organizers for inviting me, my funders of my scientific research, previously the British Academy, now the Max-Planck-Institut for Empirical Aesthetics. I'd like to really thank my scientific colleagues, mentors, bosses, and especially Professor Melanie Wald-Fuhrmann, director at the Max-Planck-Institut for Empirical Aesthetics, who proposed me for this talk. You should check out her concept research. It is so exciting. And I'd like to thank you for your attention.
Julia, thank you. Fantastic. Super. Thanks for taking us along this scientific journey that is actually very human and also easy to apply yourself in your daily life.
I hope so. My pleasure.
Willem, you will have to include dancing in the next part of the Biennale, I think.
Yeah, I think so too. You're a good dancer, Lee.
Yeah, I love dancing. This is everything I would like to do every day, but where? We should start a dance club, Willem. Let's start a dance club.
Please do. I mean, 5 minutes of dancing already has these incredible effects that we have seen, just well-being, creativity enhancement. I propose everyone should just have a little dance break reminder in their desk.
put around the dinner table.
Yeah.
It'd
And
be
then
good.
bonding. Exactly.
More
I love it.
Thank you so much for this insightful understanding, even how good it is for us. You know, it feels so good, but it is actually so good. It's amazing. Thank you.
It's such an easy thing that we all have at the tip of our fingers.
Yes.
Thank you, Julia. Thanks so much.